I've arrived at the VU Student Leadership Conference and I will be jumping on and doing a keynote very shortly. I'm here to talk about authentic leadership and sustainable growth. Actually, do we need to... I feel like I need to set up. 2:49. What's that?
You're having the last keynote?
Yes. Should I be setting up now? Just to...
You studied from VU?
Yes.
Which degree you did?
I was in St. Albans. Yeah, at the Eden course, Electronic Design and Interactive Media.
Yeah. So I'm the current student right now.
Oh, are you? Oh, cool. What are you studying?
I'm doing a master's in education. I've previously done 3 other masters.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. So it's your 4th master? You just, okay, cool. So what were the other 3 masters?
MBA, Masters in Development Studies.
Yeah. Oh, would you like to join me on the speaking panel?
No, please do.
Okay.
It's going to take me time.
Right, that's very impressive though. Okay, cool. Nice to meet you.
Same here.
So get nervous?
No, I don't get nervous. No. I just hope that I provide value and I'm talking about the right thing. Because I can talk about, like I said, it's just my perspective, so I can talk about anything. But yeah, hopefully it connects. We'll see.
Do you have like a specific, like a particular person you kind of talk to, like when you're in the crowd?
No, not at all. I just talk generally and every now and then I'll feed off someone that's sort of feeling the energy and go from there, yeah. I don't pitch anyone naked or anything like that, any of those weird things, or like do triangle signs. No.
You ready?
Yeah, as ready as I'll ever be. Hey guys. After that intro, I'm not sure if I need to do my intro anymore, but thanks so much. My name's Vince LeBon. So I am a VUT alumni. I too were like many of you back in the day. It was quite a long time ago now. But yeah, I grew up in the western suburbs where I was told that, you know, being a basketball player or being a rapper were my only sort of 2 options. I tried both, failed at both of them. So I thought I'd give shoe design a try. So I founded Rollies about 13 years ago, and it's been an incredible journey. And so I'm going to take you through just a little bit about who I am and how I got there, and then I'll go into the frameworks that I use to sort of scale the business. So as mentioned, I've worked at Adidas over in the States. I worked in Brooklyn, which is the innovation hub at the Brooklyn Farm, which was an absolute dream come true. I ended up winning a TV show where I was on a reality TV show in the States, and I designed shoes for celebrities for 8 weeks. So I was given, we met a celebrity, we were given a project, and we came up with concepts, and we would design a shoe for them and pitch the shoe back to them. I ended up winning that, and so I moved my family over to the States. It's been a crazy, crazy journey. I had no plans of ever being on a reality TV show. But you know, sometimes you just got to follow your heart and sort of put yourself out there. That led me to working with Foot Locker. I've worked with the Jordan brand. I was on a reality TV show that they ended up selling to YouTube Red. I've studied at FIT in New York, which is the Fashion Institute of Technology, and I've gotten 2 scholarships at Pencil. This sounds all like a brag, as I'm just trying to get through this, so I can actually just go through some of the frameworks that I've used to, I guess, achieve some of these goals. So like I said, some of the celebrities that I've worked with, I did a shoe for James Harden, which was an absolute dream come true. Wanted to play basketball as a kid. To sit there and actually design a shoe that went to market with Adidas was absolutely like unimaginable when I was a kid. You know, like I said, I wanted to play basketball, and he was the MVP of that year. And what became very apparent to me is, like, I didn't really want a photo with these guys. I actually wanted to create with them. And so that sort of created this journey for me to actually just build a framework around me trying to absolutely scale my business so that we can influence culture. So I'm going to go through some of that today, and it's leading the Rollie way. So with authentic leadership and growth and ownership. And so by doing that, it's all about creating a high performance culture. So authentic and sustainable leadership, right? And those things create a high performance culture. And so in that, leadership is about growth. It's it's not about what you do, but it's about how you elevate those people around you. Because you get to a point where you realize you can't do it yourself, right? Like, I always say that I can build, forget the numbers, but I could build a $10 million business by myself, no problem, every day of the week. But I can't build a $100 million business by myself. And so what that means is, you've got to look at creating frameworks, you've got to look to inspire the team and to create something much bigger than yourself. And so how do you do that? It's by elevating, not instructing. So what you're trying to do is inspire possibilities and not just instructing. Okay, so you want people to think beyond what you're instructing them to do, and so they buy into the vision, and collectively you're working on a shared vision. And so I remember going to an event, and there was a guy speaking from America, and he had worked on $9 billion businesses. And he said, out of those businesses, he's worked at 10 businesses across his lifespan, and 9 of them were $1 billion. One of them didn't reach that, unfortunately. And he said the common goal between all of them were these 3 factors. Okay, there was a clarity of vision, there was commitment and conviction, and there was living values. And this really, really hit home, because it was the first time where I stopped and go, like, what is it that even made Rollies successful at a very small scale? It was the same 3 things. And in order to get to the next phase, we would have to really lean into these 3 pillars to really get to the next level. And so the vision of clarity is, do people know where they're going and why? Why does it matter? Why are we aligned, right? Why do people wake up every day and want to give you more than just a paycheck? They don't just come to work for a paycheck. And the commitment and conviction is around the urgency and the grit and the ownership that's required to do the hard things when nobody's looking. Because I find that when I'm there, the team works really hard. When I travel, if you don't have this locked in, you'll start to see the effectiveness disappear. And you hear this all the time. That's why a lot of people and business owners, they basically have a job. It's because they're constantly trying to manage their team instead of inspire their team to act beyond what you're able to inform them to do. And the living values is an easy one. I mean, you hear this all the time. It's about not having values that just live on the wall, but how do you live through them? How do you see it come to life throughout your business? And more importantly, what's important to you so you can define those values. So when everyone comes to work for me, the very first thing they do is they get a document that's 65 pages long. It's called the Rollie Way. And this is a document that basically is a fast track lane to them knowing what I expect, how we work as a team, what our values are, what my frameworks are. And this is something that before having the team, where I've got about 40 people now, when it was really small, it was easy to be able to communicate individually who I am, what we believe in, and why we're here. But as the team scales, it becomes very hard to be able to have that same influence over people. And if you think about it, when I've got 1 person, they have 100% of my time. When I have 10, they have 10%. Just keep scaling those numbers and you realize how much smaller the impact you have on one-on-one is. And so this document allows them to sort of read it, use the frameworks, and come to me if they have any questions, and we constantly go and refer back to this document, and I update it regularly. So this is about going from vision to movement, right? And so we're building a movement shaped by leadership that is real, resilient, and results-driven. And so today I'm going to be sharing 4 frameworks that I use. And then we'll go to Q&A. So I'm going to breeze through these, and if anyone has any questions that we can really dive deep. But these are things that, you might learn some of these in MBA. Some of it's relevant, some of it's not. But these are things that I've tangibly used in my business and I consistently use. And it's probably 4 of the most important ones in my business. So the first one is development framework. There's a task relevancy, maturity, the definition of done, and a skill, will, capacity. This is all around team management. And the reason why I'm talking about these frameworks is because you scale through team, right? Like I said, you can't do it by yourself. So the first one is, what if leadership wasn't about titles, but about how you make people feel. Okay, as a concept, that's very important because when you look at the development framework, this is about connecting with people so that they want to develop within your business. And what they're asking themselves is, what's in it for me? Yeah, what's in it for me, right? So as an owner, a lot of times business owners are like, I pay you, so you need to come to work and you've got to do this job. The reality is that's not enough for people. You'll get the bare minimum and you will get nothing else. So as an owner, when you think about, okay, what's in it for them? How do I communicate that? We basically have a framework. We have a framework which goes from executor to leadership. So we give them a path from the beginning. So as an executor, it's about mastering your craft. Okay, then you go to being a manager, which is about empowering others. So you don't come in as a manager until you've mastered your craft and you're able to empower others. The last phase in that is leadership, and the leadership is around shaping vision, culture, and outcomes. Okay, so it's really about moving from execution right through to empowerment and then to vision setting. And like a lot of these things that I'm talking about can easily be applied to life, right? Like if you spend all your time working on the vision and don't spend any time working on your craft, you're probably not going to move towards the goal that you're working towards. Okay, so a lot of these frameworks that I'm talking about completely apply to life. I can talk about that in another time, but I think your personal life, your family life, and your connection, your relationships, they're all connected. This is task relevancy, and so this is something, as you start to build teams, and I think it's really important even if you're an executor now to understand where am I at, but essentially you look at, am I new? So if somebody's new to a task, you want to be directive. This is what is required, this is how you do it, these are the tasks and these are expectations. Once they go to the next phase, it's about, oh, now I'm established. So as a manager, you're there to support them. How can I support you? What more resources do you need? How do we go to the next level, which is being an expert? And when they're an expert, basically you get out their way, right? They're so good at what they do that you don't need them to get involved. So this is the framework here. So you go from learning, doing, to being a master. And as a manager, you go from being directive to coaching to let them do their work creatively. And now this builds capacity, it optimizes leadership, it maintains standards and prevents micromanagement. The interesting thing about standards is you hear business owners talk all the time saying, people want to work with me. And the reality is they don't. They just want to work with someone that upholds the same standards as you. So if you can find a way to uphold your standards, you can step out the way, right? No one goes to an Apple store expecting to be served by Tim Cook. And so if you think about it, but what the expectation is that they're upholding a certain standard. Another one is called definition of done. This one is super powerful. And so this comes from a book called Get Back Your Time. It's by Dan Martell. But what's really interesting about this one is he was using an example of where he asked one of his workers to order a whiteboard. And it took forever, took a month. They ordered the whiteboard and they put it in his room on the floor. What he failed to do was communicate exactly what he wanted. His expectation was to have a whiteboard put up on a wall with markers and an eraser within a week. So if he'd used this framework, which he does, it's his framework now, you're able to communicate very effectively. And when you look at leadership, this is one of the biggest downfalls of most people. They don't communicate effectively. This is relevant in marriage too, if anyone's married. Right? Being able to communicate effectively is really, really important. So I use the same framework, facts, feelings, and future. And so what are the facts, right? So what is the thing that you're trying to achieve, whether it's a business metric, what's the measurement? The deliverables you expect to see when delivered, and time and date. These are all facts, right? These are not subjective. If you want it done by a particular date, that's what you need to communicate. The feelings is how do you want to feel when it's done, right? As an example, I need this report by this date with this on there, and I want to feel confident in the numbers, right? I don't want to have to, if there's mistakes in it, then you haven't done the job. When I have these numbers or this report, the team is going to be able to execute on that information. That's what future function means. So what are you looking to do with that? Once it's done, it gives them an understanding of why it's important and how it's going to be utilized. Because a lot of the times when your job doesn't get done, particularly within your time frame, it's because the person you've delegated to doesn't understand why it's important. Skill, will, and capacity. This one's really an interesting one also. And so what this is, every single quarter I get my leaders in my team, so I have about 4 department leaders, to do a skill, will, capacity analysis on everyone in the business. And what that means is, does everyone in the team, do they have the skill to do their job? Simple, yes or no. Do they have the will to do the job? So a lot of people have the skill but don't have the will, right? And there's a lot of people actually that don't have the skill but have the will, and we make excuses for them also. And so if they don't have the skill and they have the will, then you need to use the TRM framework to go from new to established to expert. Can you see how this all works together? And then the last one is capacity. And so someone could have the skill, could have the will, but doesn't have the capacity to do the work. And that might be because you've given them too much work, or you're not listening to them, or culturally there's something that's getting in the way. Cool, so that's that framework. And so this is really about shifting mindset from pressure to partnership, right? And so a lot of times in a workforce, it can feel like there's so much pressure around to just get shit done. But if you move that mindset from pressure to partnership, then it's about why do we come to work together as a team, right? And if you use all those frameworks, why is it important to you, the first one that we started on? Then you look at where are they at in their development, right? So you can speak specifically to where they are and help them develop up. Then you're using the definition of done, which is these are the things I need and this is what done looks like. So you're empowering them to deliver against something. And then the very last one, which is doing an audit on the skill, will, and capacity. And that's how you get to partnership. That's how you get from not working for the brand, but building with the brand. Okay, and this is where the magic happens. Because in my document, it doesn't say, get out of the mindset that you work for Vince, but you're building with Vince, right? Because then that's how you get to the point where you're doing super cool shit with cool people. And so what that does, it goes from a shared ambition to shared success. Okay, and ultimately that's what you're doing. If you're in the business with people, which most businesses are, you've got to find that connection. And like I said, I'd argue that this goes well and truly beyond business. If you're in a relationship, what's important to your partner? What's important to your kids? What's important to your mum? You find that out and you're going to find the shared ambition, and then you're going to find shared success in that relationship. And so the best way to do that is by leading by example. Opening up those questions, clearing, having conversations about the values and what the standards that you're talking about. The daily habits of an authentic leader come down to setting realistic expectations. So a lot of those frameworks allow you to unlock whether the things that you're asking for are realistic, right? If you're asking for things that are not realistic in your skill, will, and capacity framework, it will highlight that you're not capable of doing it, or they don't have the skill in doing it. Okay. The practical, radical accountability is around using the definition of done. When's it due? What does it look like when it's done? And the funny thing is, some of this stuff seems super boring, but when you do it, you realize how powerful it is. And then everything becomes easy. You move from headwind to tailwind, right? So you go from, I hate my team, I just wish I hired better, to oh my gosh, my team's amazing. You probably noticed I'm a little bit sick. I've been sick the last 2 days. Like my team are just absolutely like smashing it back in the office, right? Like I don't need to be there in order for them to understand why they come to work and how we move forward and what we're building. And feed forward, not feedback, is another concept that I like to reference, which is around someone makes a mistake or whatever happens, like let's not look at the past and go, what could we have changed? You can take that lens just to understand what you would do next time. Okay, feed forward versus feedback. For me, mediocrity is not an option, right? Like that's the conviction part. Okay, so why do we come to work? You know, I think being a young, like I said, kid from the western suburbs, I didn't have people around me that had successful businesses. Like I just didn't. I don't know anyone that had a successful business, you know, back where I was. I'm sure there were people, but I wasn't exposed to them. And so I think having this conviction to create the life that I want really set me up for success. And so, you know, leadership is about showing up. It's about, and showing up is success, right? Because success isn't defined by how much revenue you make. Success is defined, for me, you know, do the people you love you back? And are you living the life that you designed? That's it. They're the two things. Now, success can be whatever you want for you, but I think, you know, the older you get and the more work you put in, you'll start to realize it becomes very easy to understand what it's not, right? And that's leading the Rollie way. That's how I've run the business, and I wanted to share that story with you guys. So I think we'll go to Q&A.
Thank you, Vince. If you have a question for Vince, please raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you.
Got one over here. Just from like a personal perspective for yourself, how do you balance obviously the creativity part and then being the CEO and the operational management? Like what got you to the dance versus what you're doing now?
Yeah, that's a juggle, right? Like I think being a business owner, I understood very early on that there's a responsibility to have governance, to have financial acumen. You know, like if you want to be just a creative, be a creative. And so I think, you know, you have choices in life where you've got to understand the full scope of what you're trying to do. And it flexes in and out. When I first started the business, I launched the brand, pretty much did all of it by myself, like the design, the selling, the marketing, the website, all the finance. And it did very well. And then within 4 years, I just felt like all I was doing was running a business. And I felt like I lost the creative side. And so that's when I went and applied for Pencil, which was the design academy. So I took a design sabbatical to balance that. I ended up winning the scholarship. And that just completely took me beyond what I was expecting, right? I had a brand, I thought it was doing well. All I wanted was 2 weeks off designing. And it led me on to this reality TV show, living in the States, working with, you know, I'd come to work, and I worked in Brooklyn at the Adidas farm. I'd come to work and Alexander Wang's there, Beyonce's team, and Pharrell. Like, it was just absolutely wild. And I think it was around my commitment to, like I said, not letting the creative side die, but also not only focusing on the creativity. So it's about having a balanced understanding of what's needed of you. Yeah.
Good day, Vince. Thanks for coming out today. Appreciate it. So one of the pillars of leadership that you mentioned was the living values.
Yep.
One of the values that have come to my mind, or that's been on my mind recently, is resilience. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, how do you cultivate resilience, and what are the limitations of resilience as a value?
I think, you know, any value, you need to, once you pick it, you need to define what that means, because resilience to you might mean something very different to somebody else. You know, I come from an immigrant background, so resilience has a strong belief to me, right? It means my dad working 2 jobs, my mum not speaking the language, you know, them coming down and living with my uncle and auntie for 12 months. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a whole different meaning. And it doesn't mean that it's right, or, you know, it doesn't mean you can't be an immigrant and have that. It means something different. So I think when you define it, you need to communicate what that is, that clarity moment that I was talking about. I think resilience is almost non-negotiable in this day and age, right? So I think the world's moving so fast. You know, we're about to tap into a world of AI and blockchain and robots, and the whole world's going to change. So I think that's a skill set that's, you know, absolutely necessary. I think what's important, when I first started Rollie and we were doing values, I knew what they were because they reflect me, but nobody knew what they were if I had asked them. They knew what the essence was, but it wasn't until I made it easily for them to remember and repeat did they remember. So we have a best-selling shoe called Pace, and our values are PACE, PACE. So, you know, positivity is infectious, act with tenacity. C is creativity unleashed, and then the last one is empowerment and community. And so by creating that around a shoe, around an acronym that people could easily say, it then embodied the values. So resilience in isolation, although it might have really good intent, unless you find a way to communicate it effectively and regularly, you're not going to get the action that you want out of it. So that's why I didn't say define values, I said living values. I much prefer Q&A. I feel like I've been talking at you guys for so long. So
now I want you to know now, if you could go back and start again, what would you do differently?
Go back to today or go back to then?
Go back to then.
Oh shit, that's a whole different answer. I'd buy Bitcoin. Look, I think it's a hard thing to say because, like, if I go back with all the knowledge that I have today, I would hire. I was very lucky and had a really good hire on my first hire, but I think because of that, I didn't realize how good she was until I got shit hires. And then the bad hires create the need for a lot of this framework. So when you have really good employees, you don't need this stuff in your mind. But it's when, you know, you start getting people through that aren't executing against the vision, that don't live your values, that all these things that you're like, oh my gosh, we need something to be a guiding light for the right hiring, for the right accountability, for the right communication. So I'm very grateful for those experiences. That's what created that. But yeah, I think going back, I think probably, like, I talk a lot about like that triangle that I was talking about. I would probably prioritize my health much earlier on. I'm lucky I've done it, but I remember for the first 7 years, I was working till 2 a.m. every single night. And although there's probably a part of that was needed to get to where I was, I'm very lucky that I found out if I kept doing that, I'd probably die of a heart attack. And you know, I have a Whoop and I track everything. I've got all my analytics, but I think my answer is actually going to be less about work and more about life. Because when you get to a point where the business is successful, you know, I know so many people that have super successful businesses and they're super unhappy. So yeah, that would be the wisdom. Now, if you're asking me how would I grow the business bigger, like that's a different question. I think there's you know, lots of things that we could have done to scale much faster. I think when you look at the last couple of years, I feel like we're restarting again. Like there's a lot of PTS over COVID, and so yeah, you'd have to scale the business and then get ready for COVID also.
Thank you very much for coming in. Just have a quick question about the very first stage of your business. I believe when you run a business at the very first stage, either you scale fast or you die. So how did you do it? How did you scale your business from in the very first stage?
I'm not sure if I believe in that you scale fast or die, but I think if you don't scale at a certain pace, it can be challenging, particularly if you are making mistakes, right? I think there's many ways to fail in a business, so many ways. You look at statistically, the odds of a business succeeding is so small. I think it's like, I'm sure there's better people here, but it's like, I think 1% or something like that. And then to even be in business after 13 years like me, it gets even smaller. So I don't think it's about speed. I think it's actually about a foundation, right? So, because the faster you grow, the faster you can fall, right? So you can easily, I know a lot of businesses that have scaled massively. I mean, Allbirds is a really great example of a company that was worth $1 billion, a couple of years ago in New Zealand, and like that company's like struggling now, and there's companies closing left, right, and center now. I don't think speed is the right thing to aim for. But having said that, I think for me, when I was launching, my very first wholesale account was the world's largest shoe store in Dubai. I sold 500 pairs in less than 5 weeks. So the reality is we grew very, very fast, and we were in 9 countries with only 3 staff, right? But that resulted in me working crazy hours, traveling around the world. And like I said, I think the hiring was very important. My first employee still works for me today. Yeah, I think speed in isolation is certainly not the answer, but I think and that's where I think, the good thing about speed is when you're like hitting goals and you're moving really fast, the feeling you get is like, shit, I'm onto something. It's that conviction that I was talking about. The commitment to something because you're building something so fast and that you're aligned to, that it gives you the energy to keep things going. So people always say, do what you love, and I think the reason why you do what you love is because it's so bloody hard that if you didn't love it, you'd quit. Cool. Did you still have a question? Yeah.
I was just wondering, because I run a really, really small business, and sometimes I feel unmotivated and wonder why I'm even doing it. So I'm just wondering, how you stay motivated, and if you have periods where, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah. I have periods like that all the time. No, I think, that's what I was talking about, the love component, right? So there are moments where you're like, why am I doing this, for sure? But I think if the feeling of love is much stronger, the feeling of understanding where you're going and why you're going there, if that's stronger than the pain, then you'll keep going. Right? Like, I'm motivated to create a future for my family that I never had, that we are not limited by and I also don't want to be limiting my creativity in any way. And so I know the size of business that's required in order for me to do that. So they need to serve those 2 things, me creatively and my family, right? And so I always said, if this was jeopardizing my family, I'd sell the business in a heartbeat, right? And there's a lot of people who lie to themselves and say it's for their family, but it's not, it's for ego. I don't, for me, I try to keep myself in check for that. So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's super hard. There's moments often where you're like, the reality is it would be easier to quit. But it also doesn't mean that you're going to have the life that you're dreaming of if you do quit. And so I'm much more motivated by the life that I'm designing than the easier life. We've got one here.
So I got 2 questions to ask you. Sorry about that.
All right.
So my first question to you is I know the industry that you touched upon is quite competitive in the market. So my first question to you is, to be so successful in the market, what was your unique selling point in the company? That's my first question. And my second question is, if you want to start up a new business today, completely as a new person, what would it be today?
Yeah. So I think the first question around what did I bring to the table, what was different. When I started Rollie, I worked on the business model for 12 months before I designed an actual shoe. And so the shoe was an outcome of the thinking. There's a lot of designers who will start drawing and then go, right, is there a market for it? What price should it be? And doing that later. And they force fit something, whereas for me, it was around the model first. And that's why I think we've had a sustainable business, right? You know, for us, we had a very lightweight shoe. It was super comfortable. It was like had a menswear look in women's. Like, it was super innovative for that time. And, you know, we were featured by WGSN as a brand to watch in 2012. We were in Vogue magazine. We were in all the best stores, particularly overseas. We were in some pretty shitty stores here in Australia. But globally, where I was focusing on, it was like in all the cool spots. So yeah, I think that that's probably the reason why we looked so different and it was innovative. But the problem is like, you know, 13 years on, our number one shoe is still that shoe. And what it served then is no longer what it was. What it does today isn't what it served then. And so you've got to constantly reinvent yourself, particularly in fashion. So I think if you define the purpose and the values, it will drive innovation and new product.
So you mean to say like product innovation was the...
Oh yeah. Disruptive marketing was number one. Our very first campaign, we compared shoes to birds and bananas. So our shoes were lighter than a pair of bananas. That campaign came runners up in the print ad of Australia when we had 3 people, right? So it's not about money. Like, a lot of people think you need more money to be creative. It's absolute bullshit. You know, like, you know, a lot of people who have lots of money, they become lazy because they use it as a resource. But actually, you can be super creative when you need to. And so to be able to cut through, I think the disruptive marketing was definitely one. Having a visual aesthetic that looked completely different. I remember back in the day, if anyone had a white sole on a shoe, like, everyone thought it was a Rollie. Like, people would be stopped in the street. They're like, oh, you're wearing Rollies. I'm like, oh, cool, how do you know that brand? It's super cool. It's a guy who's designed for his flight attendant wife. Like, a lot of people knew the whole story. But like I said, I think over time, it gets diluted as people start copying you, particularly in this market. The second question, what business would I start now? Not a shoe business, that's for sure. It's fucking hard. Look, I'm obsessed with tech. So, you know, I think you could almost look at any industry and it's going to be disrupted in the next 5 to 10 years. Like, almost every industry, in the same way that the internet changed the world, in the same way that, you know, phones and communication changed the world. I think what's happening right now in AI and, you know, like I said, blockchain technology, those 2 things are incredible. But I think only do it if you love it, right? Like, if you're in it for money, you're probably going to struggle eventually. You might make a lot of money, but you won't be happy, right? Because I've told you, money doesn't equal happiness. And like, unfortunately, sometimes you need, I think Jim Carrey said, I wish everyone was rich so they can realize it doesn't make them happy, right? And so I think, but it's weird because if you focus on it and you're really dedicated, you'll probably get it. And sometimes you've got to be careful what you wish for, right? Climbing the wrong mountain is the worst place to be because you sit up there and you realize, fuck, I didn't want to be here. I thought I did, right? So setting the right goals is really, really important. And just do it for you. Like, who would have, like, if the amount of people that told me I can't start a shoe brand was crazy. Like, I had people in the shoe industry, when I showed them my shoe, they were like, this is bullshit, this is shit. You got 4 shoes, you think you're gonna be able to sell this? It looks like a man's dress shoe. And it's like, that's my number one shoe, even to this day. So you need to have enough conviction to not stop. Because, and you can't blame them for not seeing your vision. It has to be your vision. Yeah. No worries.
Hi, my question is like in terms of a startup company and you expand your business overseas in a new country. So how can you obtain your first investment and expand your connections in a new country?
Yeah. So like I said, my first wholesale account, which I made the connection here in Australia at the South Melbourne market, was the world's largest shoe store in Dubai. So I think my answer to you is, if you create an incredible product and a great experience, opportunities will come, right? You know, people always say, oh, you're lucky. It's like, bullshit, I put in the work to get lucky, right? And so I think focusing on product first, like, It is super easy to get investment. The amount of time, I get ideas pitched to me all the time about business. And they're like, oh, it's great, it's such a good idea, I just don't know where to get the money from. It's like, well, your idea's not good enough, right? Or you haven't been able to get it in front of the right person who understands how good your idea is. Because like, getting money for incredible ideas is super, super easy. I raised $2 million over a breakfast one day in the States. The only condition is they wanted me to run it. I was like, oh, got Rolly, I've got too much on. But like, you know, like once you get to that place where you realize how easy it is to get money, it's super easy. And when we grew internationally, so I did some international trade shows, and you know, we did it 13 years ago. Trying to grow an international brand 13 years ago was like really innovative, right? Innovation is one of our pillars. And so we launched in a pop-up, which people didn't even know what pop-ups were 13 years ago. So we launched over in the States. We won the Best New Exhibitor Award in the world's largest shoe show in the States, in Vegas. And then the next year we won the Best Design Booth, because I used to put a lot of effort into our booth designs. Like when I go to the States, like I'm known as the guy, oh, you used to do really cool booths. And it's like, I just want to stop you in your tracks to look at us, and then you decide whether it's right for you or not. But all I wanted was for you to stop and look, right? Like I think, do you guys know the Gentle Monster brand, the glasses? Like how many of you guys know does anyone own a pair? No, but a lot of people said yes, because their stores are beautiful, right? So it stops you, you look at it, you engage with the brand, and then you decide whether it's for you or not. And that's what we did as a brand. I just needed to get people's attention. Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Vince. The Rollie way definitely added a new perspective into leadership, and how frameworks have developed. My question was around team, and how do you create a healthy environment, in your workplace, and how do you ensure that there is no conflict? Because as the team grows, no matter what frameworks that are set up to ensure everything is healthy and moving in a positive way, something or the other happens. It's human nature that conflict may arise. So do you have anything that you keep in mind, or any fail-safes that ensures this won't happen, that potential conflict may not arise in the future, and how the team can work together and there is a good team morale within your team?
Yeah, so a lot of the frameworks I shared today are just a very small handful of frameworks that I use. They're probably the 4 most important ones. There is always going to be conflict, right? So it doesn't matter how good your hiring process is, whatever it is, people have shit in their lives and they bring that shit to work. Simple as that. And so the goal isn't to have no conflict. The goal is to have a framework to understand what is acceptable and not in the workplace, and how to deal with the framework fast and efficiently, right? And to set yourself up for future success. So, we have scorecards, we have development frameworks. So in our scorecards, we catch up with everyone quarterly, where you go through their tasks, their KPIs. We've got our values in that scorecard, and they have to give an example of how they've been living those values in the workplace. And they score themselves, and then the manager scores them also. So the self-rating basically self-corrects most of the time. Because when you go through and you go, oh shit, this is what's expected of me, I haven't really been doing that, you'll find in their answers, they'll be like, I haven't been as good this quarter, but I'm going to do better, this is what I'm going to do next time. So it's like, great, amazing, I agree with you, I think that's awesome, let's move on, right? So those sorts of frameworks allow you to have those conversations. And I think as the team grows, if you don't put those structures in place, you'll find that things break, because when they were dealing with me, I was having those conversations. But with a different manager, if you look at that task relevancy, they're not ready yet to be a manager. Like that happens all the time. You promote someone that's a really good worker, but they don't have the capacity or capability to be a really good manager. So these frameworks give them the tools to succeed.
So the questions are centered around self-reflection. They ask them to self-reflect if they think they're doing a good job or not, if my understanding is correct.
Correct. That's one of the components. That's the first phase, right? There's the self audit, and then there's the manager's audit, and then you coach between what's really happening, the objective view and the subjective view, right? Because I've had people go, I'm doing an awesome job, and I'm like, actually, you're not doing that great of a job. Here's an example why. And so at the end of that conversation, you're able to have but you're able to take on, why do you feel that way? Do you think, if they're like, I've done a great job, cool, let's talk about that. Does that mitigate some of the other stuff that you've done, right? I think it's the reason why, not to get into politics, but with Trump does a lot of things that are really good. But I lived in the States when he was there, and he does a lot of things that are bad. But because he does the good, you overlook the bad stuff, the people who vote for him. So it's just about having an honest view of the world and planning a way forward.
So you don't tell people that you're doing a bad job, but you structure the framework in such a way that they themselves understand if they're doing a bad job or not.
No, so I'll tell them they're doing a bad job, absolutely. So being clear is kind. So if someone's doing a bad job, I'm going to tell them they're doing a bad job. I just hope that they already know they're doing a bad job. So if they say I'm doing a bad job and I say you're doing a bad job, then you coach to fix that. If they say I'm doing a great job and you say I think you're doing a bad job, you're able now to communicate what great looks like and understand why they think they're doing a great job. Because sometimes when you think they're doing a shit job, you may not have visibility into the things they're actually doing that make them think they're doing a great job, right? So sometimes the blind sight's on us, not just on them. So the framework allows you to have honest communication between the two. I could have done a whole presentation on our scorecards, but that's the main concept behind it.
One day masterclass.
Yeah.
Masterclass.
Thanks for your time today. How do you evaluate your own performance just in business and in general life?
Yep. So this is going to get weird, but so I'll start with the business stuff. But so I've got my team when I say that we do a skill, will, and audit capacity. So I'm in there also. So they audit me on how I live my values and my capacity and my skill. There's also a separate manager audit that they fill out completely, which is around, am I delegating clearly enough? Is there too much pressure put on the business? All of these things, the structure's all there. So that's how I do it from a business perspective. From a personal perspective, I've got a block in my calendar every week, which is to go through my goals. And so it's a meeting with myself. And so I have a traffic light system for how I'm going against, so I have goals for personal, family, and business. And I just go through how am I tracking against it, what am I doing different this week. So green, a traffic light system, green, yellow, red, is everything under control? Is I think slacking behind, and then red is there a decision or something that needs to change to keep things moving? So that holds me accountable. But like I said, the most important thing is setting the wrong goal. So at the start of the year, you really want to put in that time and that work to go, what is really important to me? A really good example was my daughter had a speech impediment, right? So, and my brother suffered from the same thing and still has it. And so when we found out that that's what's happening, I put it in my goals to go, how do we help her? And if it wasn't for that, I don't think we would have had the progression that we had. So we've got a speech therapist, was able to check in all the time, have I gotten performance, how's she going, is she reading at home? All of those things that if you don't put those structures in, you're just gonna have pity. You're just gonna be like, oh shit, life's hard, I'm working this hard and my daughter can't speak properly. And like, you don't control the controllables. Right? This is the situation I'm in, but what can I do using the frameworks that I have to push things forward and create and progress? So I think being a designer, that's the beauty for me, is because I see everything in systems, right? Like designing is just, if you're and I don't want to say a real designer, but real design is designed to solve problems. It's not about aesthetics, right? And sometimes if it is about aesthetics, the real problem you're solving is like confidence, as an example. Right? So there is always an underlying motivation, and I think if you get to that and use the frameworks to push it along, it's been super beneficial for me. And create space for that magic. Like I said, that TV show and things like that, like that was never a goal. But I think focusing on me and my craft allowed those opportunities to create themselves.
We probably have time for one more question.
Thank you so much. I am a teacher and I was presenting a couple of times today, and I'm wearing your shoes.
Oh, amazing.
And I love them. How do you make your shoes so comfortable for teachers and people like me who stand up all day?
Oh wow, that sounds like a setup. No, I had absolutely nothing to do with that. Well, I mean, ironically, teachers, nurses, anyone on their feet all day are massive fans of the brand. I think it comes down to, once again, to problem solving. Like, I wasn't trying to design a shoe. I was trying to design a solution to a problem of comfort and people on their feet all day. And so, you know, there's a lot of tech that goes into the shoe, and we've been copied by so many brands, and nearly all of those brands today don't keep our shoe copied because they've copied, you can copy the shoe, but you can't copy the brand. Right? And then also, I treat our phone, our shoes are like the iPhone, right? Like, it gets better every year. We keep investing in the shoe. And so the other brands don't have that level of commitment. So we update the tech regularly. And the shoe looks so simple, but that's the beauty in it, because like every single component has been picked by me, whether it's the stitching, the outsole, the midsole, the laces, all of that, yeah. I don't have OCD, but it sounds like I do.
Well, thank you. I love them.
Oh, awesome. Thanks.
I love seeing the love between some two VU alumni in the room, so that's awesome. Thanks, Vince. I might just hand back to our MCs.
Thank you, Vince, for very insightful and inspiring session. And it was very good to listen to your personal as well as your professional journey and how Rollies has become this successful by your framework and the strategies that you have used, and how
Came from a place of wanting more. And I know that that might sound like they're going hand in hand, but for me they don't. You know, I can be totally comfortable with where I am today, but still want a lot more. And so I think it's about understanding it's a journey. And so for me, like, I was doing maths and science at school. I remember when it happened, it was in year 11. And I went from maths, science, excelling, to going, this is not what I want. I want to be in art. And, like, I want to be in the creative art field. And so I completely transitioned to art design and chose the harder life for the life I want.
So was it just sort of, did you ever feel like you were at some point aimless after making that choice, or like you weren't doing enough or living up to your potential?
There's moments where I feel that now.
Now?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because I want to achieve so much. And so I think, you know, like, I'm getting older now, and I'm like, to build a global brand, like, I've got to put in the work to get to that phase. You know, and so not in a way of going, I don't feel I've achieved. Of course I've achieved, but it's like to get to the next level, and now I've got to put in a lot of work and, you know, really get behind that mission and get the team. That's why I put so much effort into building team, because I can't do it by myself. So, you know, I've always felt like I'm destined for great things. So it's about that conviction, investing in that, investing in myself to be able to inspire and grow a team, to be able to do work beyond me.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I hear you.
And it really doesn't come from like going, oh, I'm not happy with where I am. It's quite the opposite. It's like, I'm so happy with where I am. I've done so much that I want to do so much more.
Even from the get-go?
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Really a privilege to speak to you. Thanks very much.
How you going, bro?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, I really like your present. Your presentation was like really cool.
Thank you.
A lot of insight. I guess my question is your education. So did you do your bachelor's in Melbourne and then head over to the US? Or?
Yeah, no, I did my postgrad here. So I went straight from school into a postgrad course.
I guess as well, when you said you kind of grew up in the West, you know, not really knowing the people that had the businesses and stuff like that. I felt like a good friend, like group, like who we hang around with. Were you like conscious of that? And yeah, how did you sort of navigate that?
Yeah, not really, to be honest. Like, I had a good friendship group, but none of us really pushed us to be better necessarily, right?
Yeah.
I think in hindsight, some of those people now are quite established and have done quite well for themselves, so maybe they had those traits.
Yeah.
But back then, it wasn't. Like, everyone was just playing, we were just playing basketball.
Yeah.
We played basketball non-stop. But yeah, I think a lot of it was internal. Like, I had a real deep drive to just progress.
I think for me as well, like, pretty lucky. My parents have been really resilient, brought us up in a good way. Like, mum's always sort of given me like good values and stuff. So I think for me as well, like inside, it's like, want to do something, and don't really know what it is yet.
Don't worry, bro. Listen to that. Let it fuel you, man.
Yeah.
Like that's. I have people ask me, like, when I do a lot of these interviews, and they're like, "Oh, did you always know, or did you have it deep down?" Like, to be very honest, man, I don't have self-doubt. Like, my thing is like, I know I'm going to do something big and great, and I just keep working towards that.
Yeah.
And so even now, I don't feel I've accomplished everything that I want in life. I've got much bigger things ahead.
Yeah, want to keep going.
Yeah. But not from a place of being unhappy, from a place of just, it drives me to do more.
Yeah. Sort of like what gets you up in the morning and stuff.
Absolutely.
You're a pretty cool guy. I've got a lot of questions. Like, I don't have all of them now, but
yeah, cool.
Prepared to be free.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm asking you.
All right.
I might as well answer the boss.
Why not? Hit me up. You got to come through though, otherwise it's not going to happen. We've got a new store in South Melbourne.
You're kidding me?
No.
Alright, cool. You enjoying it?
I'm Mauritian, so.
Mauritian, that's good. That's good. I like that. that. I've been in Australia for a bit. I'm doing my PhD on trauma-informed practice in schools for African Australian students who are highly disengaged.
Yeah.
So it will be good actually, because I can have a quick chat with you and see whether would you be interested to come and talk to our African cohort kids and the too many of them, but over 75% of them are in jail now.
Yeah.
It's too high.
Yeah, of course.
Something's gotta be done.
Okay, cool. I love the mission.
Yeah, thank you so much for today. You've been so informative, insightful, and really, I like what you said when you said you thought western suburb, there's nothing to come. I think my kids will really benefit to hear you saying that, so that they can see themselves,
100%.
that you might come from a, Footscray, Hoppers Crossing, but
it's much harder if you haven't got anyone around you that has done it before.
Yeah.
But you can still do it, but it's harder.
Well done. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No worries.
LinkedIn, I guess
Yes.
you are, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I think the time was not enough. I don't want to be selfish, so I just asked 2 questions.
Okay, cool.
Just
No
at
worries.
once. So, is it fine if I just pop you up through LinkedIn just to ask a few questions?
No problem.
I'll definitely get back in touch with you tomorrow.
Okay, cool. I might be slow, but I'll get back to you.
Sure, thank you so much.
No
But I
worries.
don't want to pop in any questions right now, but I really admire your work and your teaching skills and everything.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for coming in for today.
Thank you.
That's
Appreciate
it. Thank you so much. Can I take a picture with you?
Yeah, of course.